Oh, that ball is out of here.
And coming right for us. I caught it. And I earned 3% back when I bought this glove online with my Bank of America customized cash rewards card.
Be your own hero. Earn 3% back in the category of your choice, including online shopping with the Bank of America customized cash rewards card. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/customized cash. What would you like the power to do?
When you find a deal on your favorite thing in the McDonald's app and order it, does that technically count as online shopping? Save money with the app. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's, prices may vary.
Each year, it was really a lot of trial and error as you get through the spring and the summer, and the whole magic of the thing is trying to figure out who you are as early as possible so you can have as much success in the fall as you can.
We're back for another week of the Passing Lab with our host, Josh Herring. Josh, thank you again for taking the time here. A lot of detail go into these, and it's exciting to hear these guys dig into the passing game. And we got another great one here with Sam Adams, head football coach at Oxford High School in Alabama.
Yeah, Sam's awesome. Great offensive mind. His resume, as far as guys he's worked for, is pretty much second to none. If you put, the head coaching records of a lot of those guys up, I mean, it's almost shocking. So, really been around a lot of good coaches. So it's always fun to learn from guys who have had so many different experiences across multiple states.
What are we going to dig into here today with Coach Adams?
Sam goes into a lot of cool topics. I think one that people are going to be really into is he's going to talk a little bit of mesh with DCs, deep choice routes. And so those are two things people are asking me about all the time. So I think people will really be into that part of it. And then he's also going to talk about, calling plays while you're the head coach and dealing with head coach issues while at the same time having to be a play caller.
Yeah, and we'll be back with our Winning Edge takeaways following this interview. So here's the discussion with Sam Adams and Josh Herring on the Passing Lab.
When you find a deal on your favorite thing in the McDonald's app and order it, does that technically count as online shopping? Save money with the app. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's, prices may vary.
Greatness hurts. It's 10,000 hours of hard work, sweat, and setbacks. The aches, the stumbles, the falls. Tylenol provides pain relief for the champion in us all. It's the #1 doctor-recommended brand of pain relief and fever reduction. This summer, when greatness hurts, Tylenol will be there with care to help you keep chasing it. That's Tylenol. That's care without limits. Visit Tylenol.com/greatness-hurts to learn more. Use as directed.
All right, I want to welcome everybody to another episode of the Passing Lab. Really excited about this one. We've got Sam Adams, the head coach at Oxford High School, Alabama, one of the best passing game minds in the great state of Alabama, which I've got some history there and still know some guys there, and I know how well thought of Sam is. So we got a lot of cool things to go over. Sam, really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
So for the guys that don't know, you have a really interesting background. You've worked for some really stellar offensive minds and coaches in a couple different states or 2 or 3 states. And you've kind of been around, and I know you've probably taken stuff from all those guys. So let's just start, and I may piggyback some questions off this, but just give us some about your background and kind of the influences and the guys that you've learned from as you kind of develop your passing game philosophy at Oxford.
Yeah, I started off back in, 2000. I was a student assistant at Auburn University while I was in school there. And that was back when Tommy Tuberville was the head coach and Noel Mazzoni was the offensive coordinator. And at that time, he was really just kind of transitioning from a pro-style type tack into, I didn't know what the term air raid meant back then. And I probably don't know what it means now either, for the record. But he was kind of transitioning to what people think of him as today. Then my last year at Auburn in 2002 was when Bobby Petrino came in as the offensive coordinator, and he was, coming straight from the NFL. He'd been with the Jacksonville Jaguars for a few years, and then went with him when he became the head coach at Louisville the first time, going to the 2003 season. And I mean, I really feel like that's where I kind of really got my master's degree, I guess, in offense. That was a super dense system. I mean, there was nothing under the sun that we didn't run out of all formations, all personnel groups, all concepts, all run plays. I mean, everything was on the table every week there. And then after I finished up my second spring there, I was there for 2 springs and then the 1 football season in between. But going into the '04 season was when I started thinking I wanted to get into high school football, and luckily got hooked up with Bob Beatty, the head football coach at Trinity High School in Louisville, Kentucky. It's an all-boys Catholic school, super proud program that when I was there, we were fortunate enough to win the school's 15th state championship. Now they're well up in the 20s. They've been a dominant force in Kentucky for a really long time. There, we were really kind of in the run and shoot sort of mold, a lot of half roll passing game with the seam reads on the backside of all that. After the '05 season, I started thinking I want to get back closer to where I'm from. I'm from a small town called Corners, north of Birmingham in Jefferson County, Alabama. I took a job at Spain Park High School as a receiver coach. And that was when John Gross, who later went on to be the head coach at Oxford, where I am now, and then Jacksonville State. But he was there. And we were really hardcore by the book air raid at first, at least there. After a few years at Spain Park, I went over to Georgia at North Gwinnett High School, worked under Coach Bob Spire there. And we were really in the air raid family there too as well. Coached a lot of good players there, man. I think in 3 years there, we were 33-4, I believe. And then went back to Alabama, was at Hoover High School with him in 2012 and 2013. We were fortunate enough there, spread kind of family, but it was really its own sort of thing. It didn't really fall under the air raid umbrella. It was just a collection of things that he had kind of put together through his career that was really good. And then became the head coach at Hillcrest High School in Tuscaloosa in 2014. Was there from 14 to 20, and been at Oxford High School as a head coach since 2021.
So that's an unbelievable resume of guys to work for. You've got some of the biggest names in offensive coaching, some of the biggest names in high school coaching. It's pretty stellar when you have it all put in one talk. Let me ask you, so you become a head coach. You had all these different influences from all this different stuff. You've won everywhere you've been. How do you, as a head coach for the first time, kind of take all those different influences and figure out, like, who am I going to be as an offense? What are we going to do at Hillcrest in your first head coaching job? Like, were you able to take all those influences? Did you kind of sit down and have the big board, or work with your assistants and be like, this was great here and this was great here? Did you kind of just, as you went along, you were like, all right, I'm going to steal this and steal this? Kind of what was your process?
So I actually looked at a picture the other day that was on my phone of the original big board, like going into the 2014 season. And I was looking at that, and I started thinking, we really didn't do much of this at all. We started figuring out who our players were and what their skill sets were. We tailored that as we went along, as everybody tries to do. At that time, I had coached against Hillcrest when I was at Hoover, and I really didn't know all that much about their skill sets of their kids, to be honest with you. So we started off kind of shooting in the dark and trying to see, like what Coach Petrino called the spaghetti method. You just throw everything against the wall and you kind of see what sticks. And that's kind of what we were early on in there. Luckily, we ended up with a lot of really good players there. When I first got there, we had a freshman running back named Brian Robinson that's now with the Washington Commanders and played at Alabama. And we had several really high-end players that allowed us to run the football really well. And we really had a fairly simple passing attack. It was just complementary to our run game. And we had a lot of success there. That was just going into the 14 season. But every year there was really a brand new kind of personality of offense, really. We were a 6A school. So, we had good numbers. It was about 1,400 kids altogether. That's 6A in Alabama. But it was a place where year to year, your talent level, some years was going to be really high. Some years you were kind of going to be middle-ish of the road. We never had bad talent, I wouldn't say, but sometimes we had really young talent, and we had to play a lot of freshmen and sophomores. So each year, it was really a lot of trial and error as you get through the spring and the summer, and the whole magic of the thing is trying to figure out who you are as early as possible so you can have as much success in the fall as you can.
Yeah, I think what you just said will really resonate with a lot of high school guys because you have to adapt so much to your talent. I think all good coaches do that, but you just have different kids that walk in the door every year. You can't recruit to this is what we want our H-back to be, so we're going to find this kid. This is what we want our X receiver to be. You have to kind of coach to what's there. So I think that's a really good point. So you guys do something really cool with the mesh concept. So a lot of guys ask a lot of questions about mesh. A lot of guys ask a lot of questions about choice and deep choice. And you got all this verbiage that people use. And I get asked questions about when we're going to have this on the passing lab or this. Well, people are going to be super excited when they hear you're going to talk about a mesh with a deep choice play. People will be listening like crazy. But kind of walk us through the good stuff that you guys are doing with that. I know you guys have taken all these different influences and kind of meshed them into one pretty cool system, but kind of just talk us through what you're doing unique with mesh.
So just for some context, going back to into the 2020 season when COVID was going on and we didn't know what our practice schedule was going to be like and what was our lead in time to the season and all that, everything was so up in the air. We started kind of doing some research on what can we do that matches what are the skill sets of the guys that we're going to have, and we can do a small number of things and get the maximum number of reps. Okay. Right. So as we were going down that road, one friend of mine, and there's like a club that goes along with this thing. So I'm going to leave this person anonymous who I'm talking about.
Keep that guy safe, coach. Keep him safe.
Yeah. I don't want his family to be threatened on this, but I had a friend of mine that was pretty deep into the art browse, deep choice kind of thing, super fast tempo. And as I learned more about it, I thought, well, that could be us. We had some receivers that could really run. We had a quarterback that had a super strong arm and could run himself. And I thought it fit us really well, and it did. So we got into that kind of game plan. Then when I came to Oxford, it didn't fit our players, but I still love the idea of deep choice. And I've always had that air raid kind of influence in there. We still do the 3-day install with plays of the day. I mean, if you watch us practice, we practice very similar to what people think of as air raid teams. We do the perfect drill. We do pat and go. I mean, everything's super regimented, and we try to maximize number of reps per play and all that. So that led us to kind of combining the mesh idea with the deep choice idea. And run game wise for us, and just again for context, we are pretty heavy in the RPO world. So naturally that leads to more and more man coverage at some point. So that's how we arrived where we did with this. So going into last season, we had some guys that were quarterback and receivers that had a really good feel for the mesh kind of idea. And we tinkered around with the way that Mike Leach was running it at the end of his career out of 2x2, where basically the outside receivers had the deeper speed outs off of the sixth step. And then you're meshing the two inside guys and releasing the back into the flat. And what we found out with tinkering with that, with the high school hashes, I mean, I'm not saying that field speed out can't be thrown, because it definitely can, but boy, that ball's in the air for a long time. And we've got a high level quarterback now he's committed to Louisville right now. He's a 4-star guy. He's phenomenal. He didn't feel comfortable making that throw to the field. And then if you're trying to run the speed out into the boundary, now you kind of have the opposite problem where you run out of room a little bit. So we're like, man, we like the idea that we're trying to get across right here, but how do we make it more applicable to us and on a high school field? And then we thought, well, let's just give those outside guys the choice routes. So the way that we run the choice, we'll talk about the play in general first. So imagine 2x2 formation, okay? Any personnel group. This is actually better out of 12 personnel than it is out of 10 personnel. Once you go to 12, now you're going to get the corners either in man or in some kind of bail. You're definitely not going to get as much cloud as you possibly could if you were in a 10 personnel 2x2 set. So both outside receivers have the choice route. Okay. So the way that we teach the choice is our receiver is going to attack the near leg of the corner. It's going to be a track meet to 10 yards. And the decision point is at 10. So the first 10 yards, he is running 800 miles an hour right at the corner's near leg. At 10, we give him two choices now. When we were into this thing a little deeper a few years ago, we actually gave him three choices. Now we just give him two. But if we can step on the guy's toes, we're going to keep it vertical. If the corner is bailed and we cannot step on his toes, then we're going to trace it, which means for us, we're running straight back down the stem that we came on. So it's not a curl as in we're coming to the quarterback. It's not a comeback where we're turning outside. We're turning our eyes in toward the quarterback, but we're running straight back down the stem. And what we're doing with the inside receivers is we're meshing those. Okay. And then we're going to free release the back, we're going to release the back. That's not necessarily free release, but we're going to release the back typically to the wide side of the field. But you don't have to. You can put him really to either side. And we put it on our quarterback just to start the progression with one of the streak routes. Now, that could be, in the playbook, we would say softest corner. Quickly, that turns into best matchup, right?
Yeah, right.
So if you got a real guy out there at receiver, you may start with the tightest corner because you want to have a chance to run by it, right? And then we basically treat the meshes for that particular combination as really kind of glorified checkdowns, but also gives you another man answer if your guy on the streak just simply on the choice doesn't win outside. So that's the base way to do it. And it really kind of caught on for us more in the season in 11-on-11 football than it did in the summer 7-on-7 type stuff, where you're getting so much more. And we'd be in, it really doesn't matter what personnel group you're in the summer 7-on-7. You're going to get coverages, right? You're not going to get teams committing guys to the box. So once we got into 11-on-11 and we got into some 12 personnel or sometimes some 11 personnel, that's when the route actually got better for us once the season rolled around.
Yeah, that's really good. And I can totally see how with 12 personnel that becomes a really good deal, especially you're getting one high and people are trying to rock a guy down the box. Yeah, that's really good.
We've talked about complete crossing routes here with Coach Herring before, and he has volume 2 of his crossing routes. Coach, what's in this volume?
Yeah, volume 1 was more about drive and drag type concepts. Volume 2 really has a lot of mesh information. So there's a lot of different versions of mesh. Mesh is sometimes one of those love it or hate it type plays for a lot of coaches out there, but it's been something that some years we kind of majored in, and some it was just kind of an alternate constraint type play. But there's several variations of how we try to solve problems with mesh. And then there's some other patterns on there too that we think are a little more unique when it comes to drag type stuff besides meshes. So some things that involve getting a drag with a curl flat type pattern. And so I think there's some unique things for people. And then there's also our version of air raid shallow, which is a little bit different than the way a lot of people read it and run it. So I think it's something it's pretty broad. It's got a lot of stuff that can help guys out.
Definitely. Coaches, check that one out. The link to that one is in the description.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is,
"Thank you for calling. Please listen to your list of 46 possible service options."
Which is why when you choose USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable. 24/7 online service for claims, access to roadside assistance, and more. All at the touch of a button. Start getting the service you deserve. Get a quote today. Ability to receive a quote depends on membership eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliate, San Antonio, Texas.
So when you're in your normal drop back game, are you guys still doing a lot? I know in the past you did a lot of like 3-level floods. A big part of what you did. Is that still a big part of your passing game right now?
Yes, it is. So we're, to use kind of the air raid type terminology, we run a lot of different versions of the sail concept, which for us, that'll be a field flood, 3-level flood, either with a vertical on the outside or a post route, somebody in an intermediate route, which the base way we do it for us is a speed turn out off of the third inside step. So when we're coaching our receivers on routes, we have some things that are just straight depth routes. So, a 14-yard post curl, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of the things that are more timing relevant, we work them off of we'd say the third inside step, or maybe a post is the fourth outside step, so that we're trying to be able to stay on rhythm to throw those. But with the sail kind of concept for us, that would be a field 3-level flood. So we'd have either more or a post on the outside, some kind of intermediate route, which the base one I said is the third inside step speed out, and then creating somebody in the flat. So when we're going through all of our spring and summer, really what we try to do as coaches is figure out, all right, this is the picture that we're trying to create for the quarterback. How many ways can we change our formation, our motions to allow him to see the same picture over and over again? We really throw about 6 to 8 sort of what most people call concepts. We call them route structures, but 6 to 8 route structures, and all of our time is really spent on how can we do it this week to make it look different than it looked last week. So, with that field flood idea is definitely still part of it. And then the typical, what most people call like Y cross, that's what we think of as a boundary 3-level idea more so than the field. Now, you can do either one, right? I mean, we can run Y cross back to the field or the boundary. We can do the same thing with the sail kind of idea. But really with Y cross, we think of it as a boundary 3-level idea. And most of the games that we play there are how do we dress up the boundary 2-man side of it with some kind of quick high-low in there, whether that's the base fade out, whether that's the hitch on the outside and a slot fade on the inside. Is it a quick out with a boundary out of a condensed set and a corner out over the top of it, like a smash idea? And then obviously bringing the cross and the curl and somebody in the flat to the wide side of the field. But that's still a huge part of what we do.
So you guys are curl. I always like to ask guys that are big Y cross guys, whether they're curl, post curl, dig, because if you get 6 air raid guys in a room together, hearing people argue about that, I love it. And we've kind of done all of them over the years. Like, are you guys right now are curling?
We're post curling it. Okay.
Gotcha.
We have done all the above on what you said. We have ran a true dig. We've ran a post dig. We've ran a post curl. We've ran a point to point 14-yard curl. The way, and I'm not going to die on this hill. It might do something different next year, but for who we have right now and how it fits into what we're good at with other ideas, the post curl seems to give us command of that space more than the dig would. Obviously, you can be in a little bit better shape if you're running digs against man coverage. We have had times where we've allowed that guy to read it out also, where he'll make the post move. And then if he's basically uncapped, he continues on the post. And if the post is capped, then he curls it back. But run the cross route in a way that there's a couple of different options and he can end up in some different spaces there. I don't like 2 read routes side by side, if that makes sense. In my mind, I want at least one of the 2 routes on that side to be a locked in route where the quarterback knows that's where a receiver is going to be. Is it the way we run the cross? If we happen to get like a true open middle, like safety splitting, like a cover 2 thing, I mean, we can take that thing right down Main Street. And if we're capped in there, then we're snapping it off, So I think in my experience too, with the post curl part on the backside, I mean, I would say 90% of the time that thing is just sitting there begging for you to throw him the ball.
Yes.
I mean, that's something I'm trying to get my quarterback to believe, because he has a lot of belief in his arm and fitting routes into small windows on the front side of the route, and he's really good at that. But sometimes there's some layups back there to just throw the ball the wide open curl route. But that's where we are on it right now with the post curl.
Yeah, you have these guys, the kind of the new school version of it, and it is 2 read routes together, but you have the Chip Kelly that trickled on down to the Briles version, and you'll see guys like Kiffin and at Ole Miss and these other schools where you're getting the read options with the Y cross, and you're getting the post curl post read, but they're not really paying much attention to the front side. It's not really like they're cycling all the way back; they're just staying on that side. So to me, you make a really good point about not having 2 sort of option or read routes side by side in that way. That can be tough, at least with those type of routes. So something I'm interested in hearing from a lot of the guys that we've had on the show, we've had some head coaches, but a lot of times it's coordinators and quarterback guys. So you've been a play caller and a head coach. And kind of our question we ask all the guests this year is about their pregame routine. And you can go as in-depth as you want to. And a lot of it, guys, so they may hit on funny stuff, or I like to do this, or this is my pregame ritual. But from a head coaching standpoint, you have so many other headaches that other people don't have. Like as a coordinator, we would have our we're watching the kids, we would take them to the school, do different stuff. And I'm not going to tell my whole routine right now, but like I did have some time as a coordinator to focus a little bit on calling plays, game plan, rewriting stuff on last minute reminders. You have so many different things as the head coach of a big time program, from boosters, or this person didn't get a ticket, to this person is upset about this thing, or where their parking place is. I mean, you don't have to worry about so much junk. So how do you, as a play caller, balance getting ready to call a game with all your head coach stuff? So like, just take us through your pregame routine and maybe just some tips on managing all that stuff.
Well, number one, we're fortunate enough to have a really big staff right here, and there's a lot of guys that I could lean on to handle a lot of those things. I do make it very clear with the coaches and the players so we get our guys during the first period for football here. We bring them in before school and they cut them loose at 8:20. What I tell the guys is, if it's a Friday game day once we're out of first period, okay, and this is for coaches and players, if they have a question that they feel like I'm the one that needs to answer it, before they ask me that question, they need to think, is there any other person on the planet that can answer this question? If the answer is yes, ask somebody else. So luckily we have a lot of coaches that have been with me for at least for 4 years now and some for longer here. And they kind of know what I expect everything to look like on a Friday. So after first period is over, I don't want to be asked a question about what stuff comes up on Fridays. Coach, I need a new mouthpiece. I don't, whatever. How are we loading this on the truck from a coach? How are we loading this and loading that? All those kind of logistical things. I try my best to be nauseatingly clear about anything that could possibly come up on a Friday well before Friday gets there. So our game day routine as a team is, the phrase that I heard a lot as I was coming up, going back to when I played high school football, was after Wednesday practice, the hay is in the barn. But we are as far away from that idea as possible. I think that's crazy. So we have, after we hit Wednesday practice, we basically walk through the first 3 practices that we had throughout the week, from Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, Friday afternoon. We're basically repeating practices and getting double reps on stuff that we get in practice. So we bring our guys in and we do a walkthrough at 7 o'clock in the morning. We do a little breakfast and FCA kind of thing with them, which is great. And they do some kind of fun games with them and do some trivia. That's eye-opening. They'll always ask trivia questions like, what are the 5 SEC teams that are in the top 20 or whatever? And we'll have a kid raise his hand and say, USC or Colorado or whatever. And then everybody makes fun of them because they don't know who's in the conference. But once our kids leave out of here at 8:20, the only real superstition I've got is that wherever I go for lunch, if we're on a winning streak, that I'm there and I'm eating the same thing every Friday at lunchtime, which sounds great. But when you hit a big winning streak, sometimes you have to have some inner debates at lunchtime on Friday. I've had this same plate of Chinese food for 8 weeks in a row on a Friday. You get tired of it, So I force myself to stay on schedule with that. And then they come back in the afternoon. We got another couple walkthroughs and a pregame meal and all that. And after that last walkthrough is done, if it's a home game, I lock my door and I prop my feet up and I really don't even look at my call sheet at that time. I'm trying to take my mind somewhere else, and kind of look at that as a decompress sort of period. From my office right now, I can look out and see the stadium. So I can kind of see some people coming in and see the bands warming up and stuff like that. And I just try to sort of zone out a little bit, listen to some music and just sort of zone out. And then once I go downstairs at about 5 o'clock, then we're rolling and getting ready for the game.
So calling a game from the sideline as a head coach, you have a guy down on the field watching stuff, maybe the box, or you have a guy up in the boxes. Like, how do you work that out to help you with play calling while you're doing all your head coach stuff on the sideline?
Yeah, so from getting started as a GA, I coached the scout defense for several years at the beginning of my career. And really that's kind of the way that I think of the game. Even as an offensive play caller, I try to stand back as far behind the whole defense as I can. And generally speaking, I'm putting my eyes on, we call the nickel in our terminology here, the field star overhang guy and the 2 safeties. That's what I'm kind of, in my brain, that's kind of what I'm calling most of the game off of. So I've got to be super reliant on my offensive line coach that's on the field and the offensive line coach that's in the box to give me accurate information on what we need to be doing run game wise based on the fronts that we're seeing and the possible matchup problems that we could have there. And then, our offensive coordinator who's typically in the box, really I'm relying on him to give me information on depth and leverage of corners. Are we getting zone eyes? Are we getting man eyes? Or are we getting cloud to one side? Or are we consistently getting bail to one side? And that kind of, by piecing all that information together, that's kind of how we do our scripts for each series.
Yeah, that's really good. I know one of the things that's so tough, which first of all, that's awesome stuff for young coaches when you get those responsibilities and you know that the play caller is relying on you to give him information that he needs. Every single young coach, and I talk to our young coaches about this in a lot of different programs I've been at, is watching the ball and just the common fans watching the game is one of the hardest things. You don't realize how hard it is not to do that until you actually get in coaching and you're a young coach and you realize I have no idea what just happened. I just watched the quarterback take his drop and then watch the ball, So getting that experience of finding those things really, really just accelerates guys' growth as coaches, I think, and it helps them feel bought in. So I think that's really good stuff. Coach, this has been awesome. Really appreciate you being on. I know it's a busy time right now, especially for a head coach in the summer in a football crazy state like Alabama. It's busy here in Georgia too, but I really appreciate having you on and wish you guys the best of luck this year and just keep killing it, man. Thanks.
Appreciate it, man. This has been fun. Thanks for having me on.
Josh, let's get into our winning edge takeaways here. What were the things you focused on from this conversation with Coach Adams?
Yeah, it's hard to narrow it down, but I think three things that I immediately took away just as I was taking notes. I think the first, I know everybody's going to be into it as soon as you hear these terms, but people love mesh and people are really interested in deep choice routes because for a lot of people, there's just not much information about those, and those guys tend to be pretty secretive. But Sam really kind of opened up for us how you can kind of combine those two routes, and I think that's very unique, and you're not seeing a lot of that. And so guys, if they're from more of an air raid background and love mesh, or if they're from more of that Bryles, Heupel background and love deep choice, that could be something that maybe helps both of those groups of guys. And to sort of, in that same discussion, we talked a little bit about 12 personnel. I just think if you're going through modern trends, more and more teams from the pros all the way down to high school are utilizing 12 personnel. And Sam talked about formationally 12 personnel, the things it did for them as far as getting one high and enabling them to run that particular pass play, the mesh with DCs on the outside. And I think if more and more coaches can, as we have these tweener body types, if you can find guys to put in these tight end positions, I think it really helps you attack modern defenses by being in 12 personnel and still being able to pass the football, because they have to stop the run when you're in 12 personnel. So if you can find those hybrid bodies and really throw, even whether it's quick game or just short stuff, or whether you're really getting into it like Sam with a multiple drop back package, I think that's really beneficial to a lot of offenses. And then I think the third thing that I really like that he said, and I believe kind of been a proponent of this, is when we were talking about game planning and Sam said, after Wednesday practice, the hay is not in the barn. And still being able, as you get up to game time, to still be teaching kids and working through stuff. And I really liked how he mentioned sort of they have a very systematic walkthrough process where they're going to continue to get double rep walking through practice scripts that they've already done. And I think that's a really good, especially if you're a high volume offense, that's a really good way to get some extra practice reps without killing your kids' legs.
Yes, great stuff there with Coach Adams. Another solid episode here, Josh, on the Passing Lab, and I look forward to our next one here as we continue through the summer.
Be sure to visit coachandcoordinator.com and check out the 10% Toolkit, which highlights our partners and some of the offers they have to you as a listener. The link to that is in the show notes. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.